Before we get started, I wanted to do a quick audience survey. Raise your hand if you think things are going really well in the design industry right now. There's like 6 optimistic people in the middle. I really appreciate you. For this talk, we considered a few different titles. The Death of Design, Design Job Apocalypse, and Endless Grind, There Is No Escape. We settled on invisible forces because there are things changing all around you, silently pulling and shaping your design career. Now, let me introduce myself. My name is Ryan. I am a designer. I like to say that I have a traditional background in some ways and an untraditional background in some ways. I got a graphic design degree, and I've worked in-house at companies large and small, B2B, B2C, tiny startups, and some household names. For 4 years, I was one of the most prolific designers at Airbnb. So I led redesigns of the search experience, the entire messaging platform, and the end-to-end booking flow. So if you've ever searched or messaged or purchased something on Airbnb in the last few years, you've seen some of my work and the work of the teams that I led. The untraditional side of my background is that I've always been interested in business. And as I matured in my career as a designer, I got more and more curious, like, why are these things on the roadmap? What is the strategy? Why is this a priority? And my PM says, drop everything, this is a fire, and then you do, and then they're like, oh, well, never mind, we have to do something else now. So where do those things come from? What's driving all the work that I'm doing? So I went to get my MBA from Berkeley while I was at Airbnb, and it was long and expensive, but it completely changed my perspective on the design industry and myself as a designer. 2 years ago, I founded Accelerate Design, and now my mission is just to talk to designers about the things I learned in my MBA, the things that were the most impactful for me, that gave me that context. So in the last 2 years, I've trained thousands of designers from top companies all around the world, and I've built some trainings for companies like Adobe and Robinhood and Webflow. So having been in-house for so many years, I felt like I got the deep understanding of what it was to be a designer in those environments. And in the last 2 years, I've got this broad understanding of where people all around the world, designers all around the world, what we're experiencing. Now, maybe you feel the same way I do. I see some things that I'm not excited about in the industry. I'm kind of feeling like there's some challenges. I can see by the number of people who raised their hands earlier. It doesn't always feel great, and right now is especially a unique time. So what's going on in this industry, and how can we think about this moment, and what do we need to do as designers to be prepared for it? So this is not totally abnormal. That's okay. We're used to the tech industry ebbing and flowing, right? Things are usually like very, very good, and we feel like we're on top of the world, and then things crash, and we feel like it's the end of the world, and that's just kind of how it goes. But I do feel like this time is different. We have layoffs, hiring is down, what we do on the job has changed, AI is changing the landscape, and apparently we're all really burned out at the same time. So, awesome. On my good days, I feel like it's a really exciting time. Like the industry is evolving. We're getting to do some really cool new things. And on my bad days, I feel like this industry is under siege. And it's not just what you hear on LinkedIn. It's not all of the noise. There actually are huge economic shifts that are changing your jobs and the fate of your career. So to create a strategy to get ahead, we need to understand these things to keep our careers on track. So we're going to do today, we're going to talk about 3 categories. Why economies around the world have shifted, and we're feeling this no matter where you are. How businesses have been responding to that shift. And we're going to talk about 3 tactics you can do to keep your design career on track, despite all of this turmoil that we're experiencing. So firstly, let's demystify what is going on. Why is this happening? To understand the context of today, we have to go back and study the ancient and storied history of a time long past, 2019. 2009 to 2019 was this amazing golden era. In America, the stock market had its longest bull run in history. Money was cheap, stocks were up, everyone was hiring, candidates had leverage, promotions were a thing. And then 2020 hits, And that party that had run for more than a decade was decisively and unceremoniously over. We've entered a new era. Now, the pandemic was like throwing a rock in the pond. And even though largely the health implications of it have faded, the economic implications of it are still with us today. To understand what happened, we have to understand how the economy works and who controls the economy. And the answer is central banks. And this is not something I understood until I actually went to business school and studied economics. And in Europe, you have the European Central Bank. In America, we have the Fed. And they are basically the bank of banks. They hold all the money for the banks that you work with, and they're actually capable of managing money supply. They actually print the money for global economies. Now, their main goal is to keep those economies healthy. That's what they want to do. They track all these metrics, and they want to make sure things are in balance and going well. That's their responsibility. And how they do that is by influencing interest rates. And interest rates are just basically how much it costs to borrow money. So anything from credit cards or a car loan or a mortgage or a business loan has an interest rate attached to it. And here's how it works. Say you come up to me after the session, you say, Ryan, I want to borrow 100 euro. And I said, cool, you can have 100 euro for a year, and that'll cost $10. Some of you would take me up on that. I could change that and say, you know what, how about it costs 1 euro? So bring me that, and you bring me 101 in a year. A lot more of you would take me up on that offer. And what you would do is you would go and you would use that money in your lives. You would say, I need that 100 euros for something. I'm going to go, distribute it out in the economy. So what I've done is said, hey, I'm going to make this money more accessible to you. I'm going to make it cheaper to you. And you take it and you use it. That's going to increase economic activity. You're out there and you're spending it. It didn't cost that much, so you're going for it. It works the other way around, too. You say, maybe you come to me and you say, I'd want to borrow this 100 euro. I was like, cool, you can do that, but you have to give me 100 euro at the end of a year. Well, now it's really expensive to borrow that money from me, and far fewer of you would take me up on that offer. So you're not out there spending that money. You're not putting it into the hands of other people or buying things. And that's how, if you increase interest rates, that economic activity slows. So to understand today, let's look at how this played out during the pandemic. So the pandemic hits, and people stop going to work, and things stop being shipped. Supply chains are disrupted, factories shut down. So GDPs around the world completely collapsed like overnight. So you see a huge drop. This is the US GDP, but the trend is similar across developed nations all around the world. So the central banks realize that the economy is not healthy, and they take action. That's literally their job. And what they do is they lower interest rates. They say, we need to get this economy going. We got to jumpstart this again. They make money cheaper for everyone. And it works. GDPs recover, businesses are able to stabilize because we're making money, we're putting it into a system. Now this has other side effects. It has other consequences. Because money is cheap, companies can invest much more easily, like you would if you had this extra money. So what they do is they invest in hiring, right? And that's good. It's good for the economy for people to be employed. And tech jobs especially go up because with shutdowns, everything is physical, is becoming more digital. And so we see this huge hiring boom in the tech industry. Money's cheap. We're moving things to digital, let's do this thing. Now, what also happens is that economic activity starts to heat up too much. There was cheap money. People received stimulus checks, so everyone's kind of loaded right now. And there wasn't enough supply. All those factories had shut down. So the objects people wanted to buy, not as many of them, and a lot more people want to buy things with that cheap money. So inflation spikes. Now, inflation is the cost of things, and the inflation rate is how quickly that cost is increasing. And it's okay and healthy for there to be some inflation. We're all used to the idea that a cup of coffee costs more now than it did in the 1950s. So that's fine. What's problematic is when that rate goes up too quickly. If from 1 week to the next, the cost of bread doubles, it's too fast. The rest of the system can't catch up. Wages can't catch up. And we all end up feeling that pain of our wallets being strained. So that's not healthy for the economy either. Now, we've kind of gone in the opposite direction. So central banks act again. They say things are heating up too much. We gotta cool things down, and we gotta bring down the cost of objects back to where they should be. So they increase interest rates. They push the lever to the other way. They make money more expensive to borrow. That slows economic activity, and the inflation does come down. But businesses are going to respond to that. Suddenly, money is more expensive. It became more expensive than it's been in decades for these companies and for you. So they need to be careful with their spend. They have to be more strategic with their investing, and so they stop hiring as much. We're fine then, but look at the relationship between when rates started to go up and when hiring started to come down. The other thing that happens is when everything becomes more expensive, companies are going to want to look to reduce costs wherever they can. And labor is the largest cost for a business. So what do they do if they want to cut costs? They start laying people off. And that's why you see this huge boom in hiring, and then not long after, a huge boom in layoffs, right as that interest rate starts to go back up again. And this is where we are today. This is in America. The EU is actually doing better. Inflation is where it's supposed to be. It's on target, and the rates are a lot lower. In the US, inflation has been a little more sticky than we want it to be, and then rates are still high as a result because they're still trying to calm that heat down a little bit. Now, I'm interested, you lived through this too. Raise your hand again if you've changed your spending habits over the last 5 or 6 years. Do you spend differently in some way? Okay, a lot more people than the first question. This is the same thing, we do this too, right? Money isn't cheap, things feel really unpredictable, maybe a little bit scary, so what are we gonna do? We're gonna spend less, we're gonna spend more carefully, we're gonna be more accountable with our spending, and we're gonna want more for our money. We're gonna higher ROI in whatever it is we choose to invest that money in. Now, companies are doing the exact same thing that you do. And that last point about ROI is the most important because it starts to give us a roadmap of what we as designers can do about this to respond to the environment that we're in. So this is what businesses care about right now. When things are expensive and unpredictable, we're going to worry about that ROI. We're going to worry about the return, this cost-benefit analysis, the bang for our buck. So this affects your everyday life, this affects your career, because it's what they expect out of you. And understanding that about businesses and how they think about return gives you a roadmap to keep your momentum going despite all this chaos. So there's 3 ways you can boost return. We're going to go back to this equation. The first thing a business can do is cut costs. And that's what we saw with labor being reduced. That's what we saw with layoffs. They're like, the first fastest thing I can do is just start shedding people. That's going to keep our returns up. That's going to keep our profits up. The second thing you can do is if you keep costs the same, you just get more benefit out of whatever it is you've already do. So we're not going to fire all the people. We'll keep them, but we need them to work 20% harder and produce more. That's an attempt at this. And I think this is what's actually driving this shift in hiring, if you've noticed this as well, from like managers to like super ICs. I think that businesses don't always really understand what a manager does and the collaboration that they provide and the strategy they provide, and they're like, who makes the pixels? We want the pixels. Can we just get more people to make more pixels? It's the tangible thing they understand. So if they're trying to increase benefit, they're trying to get more people just to ship more stuff. And that's why I think we're seeing that shift from managerial focus to super IC focus. If you really, really want to increase returns, you do both. You look for a way, can we simultaneously reduce costs while raising the benefit? Can we get more value faster and cheaper? And I think this is why companies are all in on AI right now. So how can you respond? What can we do about this? We've set the context. The goal here is not to just weather the storm. I don't want you to just like muddle through the next couple of years, hope for the best, like maybe things will get better, maybe tariffs will stop being a thing, we don't have to think about it anymore. I don't want you to just kind of survive this moment, I want you to thrive through this moment and accelerate your career. Now the difficult thing here is that no one knows what's going to happen next. The interest rates and inflation could go up or down or stay the same. Economies are continuously rocked by global tariffs. We've got a couple wars going on. We've got some stubborn inflation. Supply chains are still disrupted. Things are not like they were a number of years ago. I think it almost doesn't matter. What our strategy is it doesn't change what we should do. We've entered a new paradigm. There's this new way is here to stay. And I think we're kind of playing everything on hard mode right now. If we can get really good at this, if things get better, we'll be great. And if things stay hard, if we can adapt to this and play it on hard mode, we'll also be okay. So we want to hope for the best. We're going to plan for the worst. We're going to develop some skills that are going to help us either way. Because for the foreseeable future, this is our reality. Companies are going to be laser focused on getting as much return as they can, because that's the expectation of their investors, that's the expectation of everyone. So they're going to want their money's worth. There are 3 things I want to teach you that are going to help with this, to keep that career on track. The first is I'll say strategically embrace AI. AI is super fun and useful. Designers are like, tools, yes. And we love that. Businesses love this because it's operationally efficient. They can do more, quicker. It's reducing their production costs. You see these mandates of like, use these AI tools. We don't even know what they are, how they fit together, but like, go. That's that enthusiasm for this reason. They get to spend less. The reason I say strategically is I think just embracing AI alone is a trap for designers. The reason I think this is it makes you faster and cheaper. And when has that ever been a good argument for gaining credibility? I can just do that work really fast. You know that work that used to take me months? Never mind that process. That was all BS. Like, I'm just going to knock this shit out with some, prompting. So I don't think this is leading to our long-term sustainability if we just think this is a silver bullet. The thing about this, if you've studied like strategy or game theory, when you think on business terms, when a competitor is moving one direction, you can't stay static. You have to respond, and you have to counter that action. And I don't want to say we're competing with engineers and PMs, but there's going to be kind of a collapsing of these roles in some ways. We're moving from this 3-legged stool kind of triad to an environment where they're starting to move towards us. There are going to be tools where they're going to start doing the things we are doing. And our technical design skills, like, well, I know Photoshop, they were like, okay, you do Photoshop. I don't want to deal with Photoshop. They don't have to do that anymore, right? These tools that made our work inaccessible to other people, it's being democratized. So those are no longer competitive moats. That is no longer a differentiator for us. We can't just keep doing design work faster and cheaper if we want to stay ahead. So that's not going to help us gain influence if they're moving towards us. What we have to do is move towards them. We have to learn how to vibe code. We have to learn how to use AI to ship right to code. But we also need business knowledge if we're going to also counter kind of the PMs moving in our space. And that's how I think you become a really full-stack designer, is you've got this engineering capability, do the tools, but you're also aware of the business implications of all the decisions you're making so you can advocate for your work on that level. The other thing I want to share with you is getting more value for the work you're already doing. So if AI is helping you cut the costs, and that's what businesses want to hear, this is about increasing that benefit. And really it's about increasing the perception of this benefit. Because when I've worked with a lot of designers through my courses and the trainings that I do, I would bet that you're probably not realizing the total business value of the work you're creating, and you're not evangelizing it, and then people aren't giving you credit for it. So let's talk about other types of business value. It's not just all about hitting metrics and your PMs like hit conversion. It's not just that. It's much larger than that. And there's many more opportunities for you to talk about it more holistically. So different types of business value you should definitely be aware of are financial value, of course. Anytime you can track your work back to we increase revenue or we cut costs in some way, that is going to be music to their ears, and you're the person who won't be laid off, and that would be great. But this is not always easy for designers. This is something we've been struggling with, this attribution problem of how much money we made, moving a button from here to there is difficult in some instances. So there's other types of value that a CEO would care about if they're thinking holistically about the business. Operational value. Through the work you're doing, are we somehow moving faster or being more efficient in the way we operate? Brand value. Through the work you're doing, are we changing how customers and users think and feel about our product or our company as a whole? Competitive value. Through the work we're doing, are we somehow positioning ourselves against the competition? Are we neutralizing some of their advantages, or are we gaining some advantages over them? Strategic value. This is my favorite, and one that I'm good at, is Through the work we're doing now, maybe the value produced immediately is less, but it suddenly opened 5 different doors, and we have all these options available to us. That is incredibly valuable when things are uncertain. And last is visibility, right? Through the work that you're doing, are you somehow just making the company or the brand or the product more visible? Now let's put these into practice on something like a design system, because if you've ever worked in a design system, you know some PM somewhere is going to be like, well, how much did that whole design system create, move conversion? And the problem with that question is elevation. Conversion's like one specific small metric, and a system operates way up here. So we need to talk about the value of a system at a much higher elevation, and we can use this tool to do that. So the first thing that comes to mind for me when I think about a design system is operational value, right? I can move more quickly because I have these components pre-built. The engineers have them all in Storybook, and we have a common ground to talk to each other. We can all work more effectively as a team. Now, if you're working more effectively as a team, you have a higher degree of velocity. You can actually outship the competition. So we might be getting ahead and gaining some edge in some ways. There might be some strategic value here too, right? If we've built this system, we don't have as much tech debt, there's not as many bugs, we're not being blocked by all those things. We might have new opportunities that are open to us because of the design system and how efficient it is that we wouldn't have had if we had hard-coded everything and made a mess for ourselves. And the last is brand value. If you have this cohesive system that someone can come in, they can learn it really quickly, get value from it really quickly, it's easy to use, and you're shipping things faster for them, the product feels like it's always evolving and solving their problems, people might have a stronger affinity for your product or your brand. The last strategy I want to give you is, I want to start with, you're doing so much and you are delivering so much more value than anyone's giving you credit for. Let's change that perception. We also should focus on, can we drive any kind of new value? And this is really us behaving more like PMs in a lot of ways, which I think is a natural thing for really senior designers to start to do. So to do that, there's 2 things you have to do, and I'll give you some tools for this. One is find new opportunities. This is like a specialty of mine, is like finding something that no one else sees and saying, here is value, let's go pursue this. But to do that, you also have to convince a bunch of people that you're right and that there is something worth pursuing, and it's very difficult for us sometimes as designers. The thing I want to encourage you to do is go beyond just user research. This is like our bread and butter. We're very empathetic. We want to go talk to users and find out. But how many times have you ever said, like, look, I spoke to users and they said we should do this, and the PM or the CEO was like, you're right, let's stop everything and go do that thing you just recommended. It's a great catalyst for a project, but it's not enough evidence, usually on its own, to really move the needle and convince people who are maybe a little skeptical. So we need to do a lot more than that. There's a lot more places that can act as catalysts or act as evidence that we can use. The first is internal product data. So this could be past experiments, some kind of product health or performance data. There might be something you see there. You're like, ooh, there's an opportunity. This doesn't look as healthy as it did 3 months ago. We should go investigate this. Maybe some competitive analysis. And it's not just about design or the features. How does it load? How many bugs are there compared to our competition? What are people stacking us up against? I like product benchmarking. It's really comparing your product to your other products, your own internally, your other products, the quality of them, the metrics behind them. And then industry benchmarking. And I've spoken to PMs about this, and I've had this come up in a couple of my classes where we talk to PMs and like, how do you do benchmarking? They're like, we just Google it. And just say, like, what is the industry standard conversion rate for e-commerce? It's 4%. Oh, we're at 2%. We could probably do something there. So that's a good place to start. Again, any of these can be a catalyst for a project. You can start with one and say, there's something here we should go investigate. And then all of them can be evidence to do something big and significant. Let me give you an example. The craziest project I was ever a part of was redesigning Airbnb's mobile website. And this was the old version, and it sounds like a boot camp story. It was redesign all of Airbnb from the ground up. You have 1 year. There were 4 designers, 8 engineers. We had a little tiger team. And before we had been staffed, we wanted to say, like, the team said, we need to get this in front of Brian, and we have to make a compelling argument because this hasn't been invested in a long time, and we think there's something here. And we had done some user research, and people were like, this isn't working. And even just look, there's like weird color issues and contrast issues, and the form is being cut off, and the things aren't optimized. And so we kind of looked at it, and we're like, I think we can do better than this. But we need to paint that picture for the business and to really tell that story. So we did user research, and in 3 months, I went to Rio de Janeiro and Mexico City and Beijing and spoke to people everywhere about how they travel and how we could serve them. That was a big part of telling the story, but we didn't stop there. The team also looked at internal product data. We realized this is the fastest growing platform on Airbnb. People are gonna go on their mobile phones at airbnb.com before they're gonna download a 300 megabyte app. So there's some potential here. There's a lot of demand. That's encouraging. Less encouraging, if you loaded up airbnb.com on your phone versus booking.com, booking.com loads in 2.4 seconds and Airbnb loaded in 7.3 seconds. So, okay, we're not succeeding there where we should be. Product benchmarking, if you just compared the mobile website to the iOS app, it was way underperforming, just our own internal products. And what we had done was kind of set ourselves up to fail. We had built this responsive site and said, well, if we make a responsive site, we get the mobile site for free. We don't have to optimize that. And it didn't perform, so we didn't invest. So it didn't perform, so we didn't invest. And so we realized, like, okay, if iOS is performing, we know we can get this up to a higher standard. And last thing was we looked up what a kind of industry standard convention or conversion rate would be, and we were half of what it probably should be. So we're like, okay, we definitely can do more here. So that's how we ended up getting this Tiger team staffed. My manager put this together. I was one of the 4 designers who got to work on this. And what ended up happening was we redesigned the entire system end to end. We were the only team that got to own a whole platform. Normally people own kind of vertical search team, booking team, and we got to own all of it and work with all those teams. But as a result of this, we ended up with the most modern, most cohesive version of Airbnb, and then every platform followed us. So everyone's like, okay, we're gonna just match what you guys have managed to pull off, and that's how iOS and Android and desktop web all ended following what 4 designers at Airbnb designed. So final takeaways. Things have been crazy. And they're gonna keep being weird. It's not gonna feel like it was a few years ago. We don't know what's gonna happen. And you were not trained for this. None of us were trained for this. And it's okay for that to be stressful. Hopefully, after this session today, you have a better understanding of the powers at play that are driving this, why businesses are responding the way they are, and with some tools. Hopefully you can, with being more efficient and strategic with AI, owning your existing value, which you're already bringing to the table, and just having better language to speak about it more holistically, and finding new opportunities and delivering new value, you can continue to accelerate your career in any economic environment. Thank you.